Heart to Heart, a Catholic media ministry, and the Bellarmine Jesuit Retreat House present Father Michael Sparrow in The Attitude of the Beatitudes, Virtue versus Vice. We continue now with Father Sparrow's fifth talk.
Blessed are they who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Or is it sometimes translated, blessed are they who hunger and thirst for justice, for they shall have their fill. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst for holiness, for they shall be satisfied. Simon Tugwell, in his book, The Beatitudes, writes, "It is the desire for God which is the most fundamental appetite of all, and it is an appetite we can never eliminate. We may seek to disown it, but it will not go away. If we deny that it is there, we shall in fact only divert it to some other object or range of objects, and that will mean that we invest some creature or creatures with the full burden of our need for God, a burden which no creature can carry." Isn't that exactly what St. Augustine wrote so long ago? Our hearts are restless, and they will not rest until they rest in you. This hunger and thirst for God is basic and fundamental to who we are. Sometimes we think about making a retreat or our spiritual life as a nice add-on to life. I have my life in order, and then I have this little part of my life, which is my spiritual life. It's really not essential to who I am. It's a nice add-on. It makes me feel good. It's like an extra perk. It's extra credit, I go to church. Extra credit, I give a few bucks to the poor. That's the exact opposite of what this beatitude is about. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst, who are passionate about this desire for God. And as that last quote that I just read says, that's fundamental to who we are. That's the principle and foundation of the whole spiritual exercise program of Ignatius. We're made for God. And when we get that, and we believe it, and we act on it, our life changes accordingly. But if we think that what we're doing is something peripheral to the main part of our life, we're riding on the wrong road. John Miller writes in The Christian Way, "This beatitude prompts a look at our heart's desire. What hungers and desires operate within us? Which of them commands our utmost loyalty?" There's the question. You want to do some good journaling? Pray for the grace to be able to know, really, what are my priorities? Some have said, you want to know what a person's priorities are? Look at their calendar and their checkbook. That'll reveal to you not what you say is most important. How do you spend your time and how do you spend your money? Those are your priorities. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst for holiness. Do we think of holiness as for the rarefied few? Me, I'm happy to just stay down in the dregs. How badly do we want it? There was a spiritual seeker, Tony DeMello, the Indian Jesuit writer, tells this story. There's a young seeker who comes to the guru and he says, I want to achieve enlightenment. I want to grow in my relationship with God. And the master said, okay, let's do a little exercise. Come on down to the river with me. So the disciple says, okay, I'm going to be baptized. I know what this is about. And the disciple is there and the master says, do you trust me? And the disciple says, yeah, I trust you. The master asks him again, do you trust me? And he's starting to get a little nervous now. He says, yeah, I guess I trust you. He asks him a third time, do you trust me? He says, yeah, I trust you. So he said, okay. He takes his head, plunges him under the water. The disciple says, okay, it's baptism, I understand that. But then he doesn't let go, and he keeps his head under the water. And then he says, well, this is nice, and I can hold my breath for a few seconds. But then he starts to run out of breath, and he's fighting, and he's trying to get up. And the master is pretty strong, and he keeps his head under the water. He's under the water for 30 seconds, 45 seconds. He's under the water for a minute. He's under the water for 2 minutes. He's gasping for breath. And finally, he manages to break through. And he comes to the master. He says, "What are you trying to kill me?" And the master says to him, "When your desire for holiness and for God is as strong as your desire for breath, then you'll advance in the spiritual life." Oh. That's not us. For most of us, our desire is about this deep. I say in Our Father before I go to bed at night, "What do you ask? Get off my case. Come on, at least I'm going to church. What about those other dumb schmucks down the road? They don't even go to church. Did I tell you about his adulterous relationship with his secretary? Did I tell you about my boss and the way that he's cheating on his taxes? Get off my case. I'm not that bad." Isn't that us? We look to the left, we look to the right. We say, "Well, compared to him, I'm a saint." Yeah, boy. How about if we compare ourselves to the Lord? That's the mark of a Christian. It's not looking at your boss or your neighbor. It's saying, in the words of Paul's letter to the Philippians, put on the mind of Christ. If we compare ourselves to one another, hey, I'm doing pretty good. What's the standard? The standard is imitating Christ, imitating Jesus. John Stout, in his book, The Message of the Sermon on the Mount, writes, "Biblical is more than a private and personal affair. It includes social righteousness as well. Thus, Christians are committed to hunger for righteousness, for justice in the whole human community as something pleasing to a righteous God." John Stout reminds us, as Pope Francis reminds us again and again, that our relationship with God is not simply a me and Jesus relationship. It has to have spillover into how we act in business, how we act in our neighborhoods, how we act in our families, with our disagreeable in-laws. That desire for holiness is not just what goes on in the privacy of personal prayer. It's how we act in all of our life. The biblical definition of justice is right relationship. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst for right relationship with one another, right relationship with God. That's what this beatitude is about. I wrote a poem a number of years ago that I want to share with you that's simply entitled Saint Martha. It's based on that story in Luke chapter 10, verses 38 to 42. The background to that story is Jesus obviously enjoyed spending time with Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. When Jesus wanted to get away far from the crowds, he had friends like every other human being. As God, Jesus loved all people. But as a human being, he had particular friendships. Peter, James, and John were the inner core of the disciples. He chose the 12 from all of the disciples. He chose these 12 that would follow him in a more intimate way. But of the 12, Peter, James, and John were clearly his favorites. Remember, they were the three that he took up on Mount Tabor, where the transfiguration took place. And as he's about to face his death, he takes again Peter, James, and John into the Garden of Gethsemane with him. Among his favorites were Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. Jesus went over to their home, not to heal them, not to do any miracle, just to kick back and have a good time. Now, Martha's a type A personality, and she's probably a sensate on the Myers-Briggs scale. In other words, she knew what Jesus liked. She knew that Jesus liked the 7-layer salad. And it takes a long time to prepare a 7-layer salad. Jesus didn't like 3-buck chuck, you know. He liked Kendall Jackson, Cabernet. He liked his steaks medium rare, prime cut. She knew the particulars, And she knew that Jesus appreciated crystal glasses and a nice lace tablecloth. He liked all of those things. He delighted. He appreciated people going out of their way. So Martha's working all this time to prepare the meal. But meanwhile, what's her lazy sister Mary doing? When Jesus comes, she just sits there at Jesus' feet, lapping up his words, laughing at his jokes, enjoying all that Martha had worked so hard to prepare. Martha gets irritated. She says to Jesus, "Tell my sister to get off her duff and to help me in the kitchen." Now that sounds like a pretty reasonable thing, doesn't it? After Martha's been laboring all day, that Mary would get up and do something. But the surprising twist in the story is Jesus rebukes Martha and says, Mary's chosen the better part and it's not going to be taken away. What's the better part? Spending time with him. Now, Martha, if you want to do all of those things that I like, yes, you're right. I like all of those things. 7-layer salad, Kendall Jackson, medium rare, all that stuff. Yeah, you got it. But if you can't give that stuff to me without resentment in your heart toward your sister, I don't want it. I'd rather eat peanut butter and jelly and sit down on a paper tablecloth on the dirt if I can have your undivided attention and just enjoy some good conversation with you. That's what I want. That's why I come here. I'm not coming for the meal. I'm coming so that I can be in communion with you. And if you can give me that freely, then that's what I want. If you can't, I don't want it. Saint Martha. You baked the bread your good friend ate. You poured his wine, polished his plate. You sliced his cheese, seasoned his meat. You cleaned, you polished, you baked. Your sweat was sweet, your joy sincere, as long as Jesus noticed. But the Savior simply sat. He drank your wine without you. He ate Martha's cakes with Mary's smiles. In the presence of her laughter, while you labored near your oven, he left well-deserved praise unspoken. Silence. The hostile fear of a forgotten heart boiled faster than a near-empty kettle. The least he could say was, "Thank you," or to her, "Go now and do the dishes." No comfort his reply, a stab wound to the heart. Salvation can seem so cruel. Did you then retreat into your kitchen to pour your tears into your soup, pretending it was only and all for him? Martha, Martha, when did you begin to heed his words, slowly unknotting your apron, sitting simply and still in the gift of his gaze? How did you learn to prepare the one thing necessary to transform a house slave into a saint? The one thing necessary. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst for holiness, for righteousness, for justice. Blessed are they whose passion is union with God. That's not where most of us are. Don't think of this story of Martha and Mary as some domestic woman's tale. It cuts to the heart of what are you passionate about? For Martha, it was household tasks. But maybe you're a businessman or a businesswoman who's putting in 40, 60, 80 hours a week, and you say, well, I'm just doing it for my family, right? Yeah, right. Ask your kids, what would you rather have, a Porsche or a little more time with me? Ask your spouse, would you rather live in Barrington Hills and never see me, Or would you rather have some quality time in your marriage and live in a lesser neighborhood? What St. Ignatius recommends is put yourself on your deathbed. This is one of his spiritual exercises. Imagine that you're dying and you're looking back on your life. It puts your life in perspective. What do you wish for as you're dying? Boy, if I had only put in a few more hours at the bank, if I had only sealed that big deal, if I had only sold my stock just a little sooner. Is that what you're going to be thinking about when you're dying? Or it's, I wish I would have spent a little more time with my kids. I wish I wouldn't have opened my mouth. Why did I have to tell her? Why did I have to tell him how they had screwed up? If you're at the end of your life, what's really important? Doesn't it boil down to our relationships with the people we love and our relationship with God? Isn't that what's most fundamental? Then act from that perspective. That's what this beatitude is about. This hunger and thirst does not begin in our hearts. It begins in the heart of God. God who is passionate for relationship with us. There's a wonderful meditation written by Mother Teresa, a meditation on I thirst. She imagines Jesus speaking these words that he spoke from the cross, I thirst. You know, we interpret the scripture always on at least 2, if not 3 levels. There's the literal level. Jesus is dying on the cross. He hasn't had anything to drink. Physically, his throat is parched. He screams, I'm thirsty. Physical level, give me something to drink. For Mother Teresa, she had a mystical experience when she saw a beggar in the train station begging and saying, I'm thirsty. She saw that beggar as Christ. And so in all of the chapels of the Missionary of Charities, her order around the world, are the words, I thirst. Yes, he's physically thirsting in the poor. And he is spiritually thirsting for relationship with every one of us. That hunger and thirst in us for holiness is there because it's in the heart of God first. My friends, if we really took that seriously, that God hungers and thirsts for a relationship with each one of us individually, not generically, it would change our life. If we really believed that God was passionate in his desire to be in love with us, it would change our life. But we don't believe that. Or we believe it this much, when the reality is Jesus' heart is this infinite ocean of mercy, this infinite ocean of love, this infinite desire of hungering and thirsting to be in relationship with us. And we're created in the image and likeness of God. That is to say, God is forever desiring to be in relationship with us, and he has placed inside of us this infinite desire for God that only God can satisfy. And Ignatius says that we stuff into that God-sized hole inside of us all kinds of other things, but they can't satisfy us. They just enslave us. We're made for God. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst for holiness. What's the opposite of that? I think it's filling that God-sized heart with anything and other thing other than God, gluttony. The way that the Catholic evangelist Matthew Kelly puts it is, you can never get enough of what you don't need. Too much drink, too much food, too much drugs, too much work. Our hearts will only be satisfied when we're in right relationship with God. how do we fan the flame, so to speak, of that relationship with God? What do we do? Well, Ignatius recommends a simple 15-minute-a-day practice that he calls the examen. There are lots of different ways of doing the examen, but the way that I'm going to explain to you is my favorite. Ignatius says if you don't do any other prayer in the course of the day, do this one. Why? Because it's about praying about your life. It's about looking back on the past 24 hours or the past day and saying, how did I use my time? What was important to me? What went on in the course of the day? Did it bring me closer to the Lord? Did it bring me farther away from the Lord? I guarantee you, if you do this day in and day out, it will change your life. When you go to confession, you won't be confessing the same old sin over and over again. You'll find new ones to confess. Because you'll be going deeper into your heart. What are the 5 steps? Number 1, I quiet my mind and my heart for prayer. I pray in these or similar words, Lord, I believe at this moment I am in your presence and you love me. Come, Holy Spirit. Maybe you light a candle. Maybe you go into a special prayer room within your house. Maybe you turn the phone off. Maybe you shut the door. Maybe you put on noise-canceling earphones. Maybe you do it walking outside. However you do it, you take 15 minutes and you begin by saying, Lord, I want to quiet my mind and my heart. Give me that gift. Send me your Spirit. Because for Ignatius, it's always a gift to know the truth of our life. Most of us spend our lives in denial. As I said earlier, we see everybody else's faults except our own. We can see that everybody else is gifted, everybody else is loved, but we're blind to it in ourselves. Pray for that gift of knowing how much God loves us. I want to see the truth of my life. That's step 1. Step number 2, I offer gratitude to God for the blessings of the day and begin by savoring my gifts, not dwelling on my problems. Lord, I'm grateful for all the ways you have shown your love to me this day. I'm especially thankful for. This isn't just counting our blessings, it's savoring our blessings. Spending some time thinking about what are you grateful for? For the last 6 years, I've been suffering from 2 different eye maladies. One is called blepharospasm, and the other one is apraxia. And just within the past 6 months, I've been healed 95% of that through a combination of going to different doctors and having a lot of people pray with me and for me. That condition, if it's not arrested, leads to blindness. Because what happens is you can't open your eyes. The muscles in your eyes spasm and they close. 6 years I've been struggling with that. Just in the last 6 months have been 95% healed. Let me tell you, I will never, ever take the gift of sight for granted. Prior to that sickness, I have the gift of sight. Oh, woe is me, I have to wear glasses. Now, I thank God every day for the gift that I can look at you and my eyes don't shut. Because in the height of that, about every 3 minutes, I was thinking about, can I open my eyes? Can I get my eyes open? Can I get my eyes open? Okay, my eyes are open, now they shut. What are the blessings in your life, so many of them that we take for granted? Even if your relationship with your spouse is rocky, just think about what it's going to be when he or she dies. Your relationship with your kids may be alienated right now, but think about if you're dying or if they're taken away from you and they die, how are you going to feel about that? It puts a lot of things in perspective. Ignatius says, begin the examen by taking some time to savor your blessings. Number 3, I review the events of the day, noticing the feelings that surface, my hopes, my fears, my regrets, my joys, my sorrows. Lord, help me to recognize you in all parts of my life. Jesus, I want to see. Now, it's this step 3 that there are different authors will talk about it in different ways. I like this because the emphasis is on paying attention to your feelings. It's not getting up in your thoughts. It's saying, what did I feel today? Well, I was happy, I was angry, I was sad, I was horny, I was jealous, I was enraged, I was depressed, I was giddy, I was joyful. Review all of the feelings in the course of the day. Just be honest about all the stuff that's gone on in the course of the day. So much of that stuff we just suppress, we don't pay attention to. Ignatius says, put it all there, put it out in the open. And then step 4. I pray from the feelings that surface, talking to God as a friend, listening with my heart for God's response of love. Pick not all of those feelings, but one positive feeling, one negative feeling, and talk to God about that as one friend to another. Talk and listen. Talk and listen. Have a conversation with God about what came up in the course of the day. Don't make the mistake of dumping. All right, God, here's what's going on. My day was absolutely terrible, and all these terrible things happened, and nobody appreciated me, and it was just terrible, and I felt lousy, and that's it. Thanks. Goodbye. That's the dump and run. Give God a little chance to respond to that. Now, are you going to hear a Herman, this is God speaking to you. Here's what you need to do. That may happen, but chances are probably not. What is God going to do? There's going to be a feeling that's going to come in your heart. There's going to be a thought that pops into your mind. There's going to be a memory that surfaces. There'll be a Bible passage. There'll be a part of a homily that you heard at Mass or a talk at Bellarmine that suddenly pops into your mind and said, I haven't thought of that in a few years. All those subtle ways that God has of getting our attention, redirecting, entering into this dialogue. Step number 5. I look forward in hope, asking for the grace to better serve you. Lord, enlighten me so that my future choices praise, reverence, and serve you above all else. Show me the way. In other words, what did I learn today that I can apply to tomorrow? What can I do better so that I'm not falling in the same hole? Or something really wonderful that happened today that I want to remember that so that I can apply it to tomorrow. Look forward to tomorrow in hope. 5 steps. I quiet my mind. I offer gratitude. I review the events of the day, noticing especially the feelings. I pray from one or other of those feelings. I enter into a conversation with God, talking and listening. I look forward to tomorrow in hope. Ignatius says if you don't pray any other prayer, pray the Examen, because it's turning our life into a prayer. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst for holiness, for they shall be satisfied.